Gosh, I feel bad even asking this. Will Bryce Young go down as the worst #1 draft pick ever?
Possibly, but it's been an unmitigated disaster.
I think Bryce Young is done in Carolina. I really do. I wanted to be disciplined with how I was going to look at Bryce and evaluate him this season because I know it's not a good situation, but there was no improvement.
You saw Bryce Young the first week of the season with Dave Canales on the bench. He looked like a broken
Steve,
quarterback.
are you saying that NFL fans are not patient? Are you saying that nobody allows a large enough sample size to see if a guy can maybe figure it out? Are you saying this is an issue in the NFL?
This is an issue with the NFL fan base. Yes, it is.
Carolina Panther fans have been through a lot in recent years. The excitement of giving up an absolute haul of draft capital for Bryce Young was swiftly replaced by horror as they watched their golden ticket to relevancy combust into flames while CJ Stroud delivered one of the greatest rookie seasons ever. However, the low point of Young's career didn't last that long, with the former Heisman Trophy winner rebounding in fine form in the second half of the 2024 season, shocking everyone in the process. He went from a generational bust to a comeback king, and this is exactly how Bryce Young proved everyone wrong and what it means for the future of this franchise. NFL teams are nothing without a good quarterback, which is absolutely why nobody batted an eye when the Carolina Panthers went and did this.
There has been a trade for the #1 overall pick, the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears making a deal.
Receiving a massive haul, which includes the #9 overall pick in this year's draft, a first-rounder in next year's draft. They also received wide receiver DJ Moore, along with other future draft selections. This is the 13th time in the common draft era that the #1 pick has been traded.
I'm struggling to see the benefits on the Carolina side of things, as much as I can see them with Chicago, and it's the DJ Moore piece, because presumably you're moving up to #1 to get a new quarterback, to get a young quarterback, and now you're taking away the #1 receiver from that young quarterback.
Only for them to look out of depth and undersized in their first season as a pro. Panic unsurprisingly sets in. And now look, I'm gonna definitely give Bryce Young some slack here, because when the team completely trades away your best wide receiver and then also all of their picks to go and get you, they're pretty much just throwing you into the deep end and hoping that you can swim, not knowing how to swim ever in your life, if that's a good metaphor. But when things didn't improve this year in 2024, or at least how we thought they weren't going to, and he proved us all wrong, at the beginning of the season at least, it appeared that all hope was lost for Bryce Young. Despite even playing behind a bolstered offensive line and with several new receivers to aim at, Young collapsed miserably in the first 2 weeks of the 2024 season, managing just 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. The Panthers front office assured everybody that they still believed Young could be the future of the franchise, but nobody believed them, especially when Andy Dalton, of all people, was slotted into the lineup in week 3 and then went on to carve up the Raiders to the tune of 319 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Dalton to the check. Hubbard bangs his way in. We've got that one timeout left in their back pocket. Dalton taking a shot to the end zone. It is caught. Can they protect Dalton? Put some air under it to the end zone. It's caught. Picture perfect dive from Dalton.
Oh, and to put this in perspective too, I'm going to read this directly off of my notes right now, because this is as crazy as it sounds when this did happen in the regular season, is that Young crossed the 300-yard mark just once in his 18 games as a Panther as a starter up to that point in the season of week 3. When Dalton did it in his first game, that's when kind of people started to go, oh, maybe it is Bryce Young after all, and not the quarter or the team around him, that it is Bryce Young is indeed the problem here. This was rock bottom for their first overall pick, and apparently rock bottom for the franchise that had mortgaged their future to select him. The pain was then only made worse, though, by the fact that CJ Stroud, the man selected after Bryce Young by the Texans, had delivered elite football instantly and shocked the world by taking Houston, of all teams, last year to the playoffs as a rookie. To say the vibes were bad in Carolina would be an absolute understatement. However, while everyone focused on what the future might look like for the Panthers, Young withdrew himself from the spotlight, took a breath, and reset. We all might have written him off, but he certainly wasn't giving up just yet. And I mean, trust me, while Andy Dalton did initially start out hot, his performances began to tail off. And then when he sprained his thumb in a car accident, Bryce Young was then thrust back into the lineup and was ready to prove everyone wrong. And I mean, trust me, a humiliating benching of your first overall pick is not what you want to see anything happen to any quarterback that is taken first overall in the NFL draft. But in this case, it almost is exactly what Bryce Young needed. I mean, first and foremost, Young had absolutely reached rock bottom. And because of that, the pressure was released, expectations were lowered, and at that point, he had nothing to lose. Secondly, he had been given 5 weeks out of the spotlight, allowing him to learn from Andy Dalton and understand better what his offense was capable of. I mean, when we really look at that team too from 2024, is that they weren't the messy concoction of talent from 2023. This was a far superior offensive line with much more explosive weapons to make the most of. He could trust his protection more and could put more faith in his receivers to come up big for him. His first game back in Week 8 against the Denver Broncos, a far from ideal return to action against one of the best defenses in the NFL, led by superstar cornerback Patrick Surtain and an excellent pass rush. I mean, it's not the most ideal situation, but you got to put the guy out there. And I mean, to the surprise of everybody too, things did start well with Young leading a 10-play, 49-yard drive that ended with a perfectly placed dart to Xavier Legette on a slant route to take the early lead. And I mean, yes, things did go down from there, but Bryce Young did at least complete 64.9% of his passes for 224 yards in a game where his top receiver Legette would leave with an injury. Not only that too, but he did manage to snag his second touchdown to improve his box score at the end of the game with a nice back shoulder pass to undrafted rookie Jalen Coker, but 2 interceptions proved there was still some room for improvement. Nevertheless though, I mean, to do this against a very tough defense was a very good sign to see that Bryce Young was trending in the right direction. He continued to play well, and in Week 9, the outcome was a far more positive one too, where Bryce Young completed 16 passes for 171 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception in a tense 23-22 win over the Saints. Young once again opened the Panthers' account with a nice touchdown to Legette. There was a blemish on the box score and an interception that came on one of the most unfortunate plays of the season as he fired a stunning pass down the right sideline for Legette, who had brought it in only to have it wrestled away by a Saints defensive back. I mean, truthfully, watching that game too, Bryce Young didn't really care either, because when he did get the ball back with 3.5 minutes to go, he promptly marched his team downfield to set up the game-winning touchdown by Chuba Hubbard. This was a new-look Bryce Young, and I mean, with that drive, it highlighted by a brilliant 26-yard completion to Legette on a crucial 3rd down and 10. I mean, that really showed that Bryce Young had really come a long way, and that there was really, if you look back on it, the early Bryce Young had no chance of converting that, but signs of the former Heisman Trophy winner were beginning to emerge. And I mean, the vibes were certainly improved in Carolina, but there are 2 wins coming in against struggling teams in New Orleans and the Giants. Nobody was getting too far ahead of themselves. And I mean, neither team possessed too much of a threat defensively, particularly in comparison to the likes of Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, and Dallas, who Young would all be tackling in the 4 weeks after the bye. Unfortunately, I mean, as we all could have guessed too, that bye week was followed up with 4 losses on the bounce, but you won't have heard too many complaints about it in Carolina. The reigning Super Bowl champs came into town in Week 12 and only managed to escape with a 3-point win. The Buccaneers then only managed to leave with a 3-point victory in Week 13, and it took overtime for them to get the job done. I mean, the Panthers were putting up a fight that we had not seen from them in years, and more importantly, Bryce Young had taken even more steps forward. I mean, despite the losses, Bryce Young became the first quarterback since Cam Newton in 2012 to throw for 250 or more yards in consecutive games without a turnover. I mean, against a Chiefs defense that had just won the Super Bowl, led by one of the smartest defensive brains in football in Steve Spagnuolo, Bryce Young completed 21 of his 35 pass attempts for 263 yards and 1 touchdown. He was moving the ball well against the Kansas City defense and even led a potential game-winning drive to put the team in the lead with under 2 minutes remaining. Of course, as we all do know, Patrick Mahomes did work his magic and got his team into field goal range to pinch the 30-27 win, but the fact that Carolina had pushed the champs to the limit was incredibly promising for Panther fans. Then, I mean, when you even think about it against the Bucs, Bryce Young passed for a season-high 298 yards and a touchdown, including a sensational 3rd down completion early in the second quarter, in which he escaped the pass rush, rolled to the right, and fired a beautiful pass downfield. This is what the Carolina Panthers were picturing when they selected him 1st overall, A decisive, elusive, creative, and dangerous version of Bryce Young that we all thought was gone forever. I mean, truthfully, as good as he was playing and for as improved as his stats were during that stretch too, the Panthers really should have won more games, but they didn't. Like, I mean, so many of his best plays this year were ruined by just his teammates not being able to come up in the clutch. And one of them actually came against the best defense in the league and the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. When they were down by 6 points with just 3 minutes left on the clock, Bryce Young got the ball back on his own 3-yard line. All looked lost when a 3rd and 11 play resulted in him running for his life in his own end zone, facing a potential safety, but he somehow shed the contact and brought just enough time to find Leggett deep for a 31-yard completion to keep the drive alive. Then after converting a 4th down to keep the drive alive once again, Young appeared to have won the game with a stunning deep pass to Leggett with the Eagles bringing a blitz. It really should have been the highlight play of Bryce Young's career up to this moment, downing the league's best defense with a sensational game-winning drive under pressure, but replay showed that Leggett had failed to complete the catch and the game was lost. It was truly a heartbreaking moment for Panthers fans, although the play from their young quarterback could no longer be in question. Like, the dude was delivering on a high level on a regular basis now, a complete transformation from the mess he was earlier in the season. Thankfully though, he was rewarded with a thrilling overtime victory against Arizona in week 16 before putting an exclamation point on his comeback season with a 5-touchdown performance against Atlanta in the season finale, which was another overtime win, this time by 44 points to 38. No moment summed up the new-look Bryce Young more than his early celebration on a 4th down touchdown pass to Tommy Tremble in that incredible outing against Atlanta. Like, I mean, after starting his NFL career as a shell of himself, Bryce Young finished the 2024 season brimming with confidence, having refound the creativity and killer instincts that made him so special at college. Like, I mean, to win the final game of the season by completing 73.5% of his passes for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, along with 24 yards and 2 scores on the ground, was all the evidence we needed to know that this was one of the greatest comeback stories in NFL history, transforming from a generational bust to a future star in the space of a season. And I mean, for Panthers fans and just the front office in general, this has to be a massive sigh of relief for them, because now they can actually start building around the franchise quarterback that they thought was going to be their franchise quarterback 2 years ago. I mean, look, if they can continue to just add a few more pieces around him and just get some more guys that are more dominant wide receivers, better offensive line, and even help on the defensive side of the ball too, Bryce Young is going to continue taking massive steps forward if this continues and they build this team properly around him. Like, I mean, in Xavier Leggett and Jalen Coker, Young has 2 exciting up-and-coming receivers to grow with. While they both do need to take a significant step forward to be considered a true number 1, there definitely is potential for this to happen, especially considering Leggett played through a wrist injury in most of 2024. Their rookie tight end Jatavion Sanders also showed signs of promise, and Chuba Hubbard is more than capable of owning the backfield until he is joined by Jonathan Brooks, an exciting rookie running back who suffered his 2nd ACL tear in as many years. I mean, Adam Thielen also proved to be a very handy safety valve for Young and is absolutely someone they should look to keep around. And I mean, while it definitely will not be a surprise to see Carolina add one more exciting receiving option to this offense, it is the defense that should be more focused on the 2025 free agency period and even the draft too. Like, I mean, their 31.4 points conceded per game was by far the most in the NFL in 2024, with the next closest being the Dallas Cowboys with 27.5. In particular too, it was the run defense that struggled, giving up 179.8 yards per game on the ground. And for context, the New Orleans Saints were 2nd worst, giving up 141.4 yards per game on the ground, almost a 40-yard difference. So I mean, that just simply has to change. Hopefully the return of Derrick Brown, who was lost for the season in week 1 after signing a massive 4 years, $96 million deal, will be a huge help, but don't be surprised to see more help arrive on the D-line for Carolina. Like, being able to stop the run is essential to maintaining balance in the game, and the Panthers could not threaten the quarterback in 2024, making the defensive line a clear priority heading into 2025. And I mean, yes, they should be looking to add another offensive weapon as well, but probably a bit later in the draft or in free agency. The good news is, though, is that the Panthers have picks in each of the first 5 rounds to utilize, hopefully going a long way to get younger and more talented at key positions, especially considering they no longer have to worry about their quarterbacks with one of those picks. In my opinion, the future is finally looking bright for Carolina, and if they can continue to bring in some talent to shore up the defense and build around Bryce Young, they really could emerge as players in a weak NFC South in the next couple of years.